Time for a spiritual awakening. Time for a spiritual awakening.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spiritual Awakening 101. My name is Reverend Jerry Yaakov, and I'm your host. Today, we're going to be reading out of 365 Days of Richer Living by Ernest Holmes and Raymond Charles Barker. This is one of my favorite daily readings, and it's from August 29th, an entry in the book, 365 Days of Richer Living. August 29th, it's entitled, All of God is My Inheritance. And I'll start with a comment briefly on the title of this little article, this daily entry, All of God is My Inheritance. This implies to me that there is no partiality. God does not give sparingly, or scarcity is not real. There's only an entirety, a wholeness, a holiness, a maximal extension of love, that which God is. So all of God, a maximal expression, that's all that God ever creates with, is allness. And it also expresses, I think, a description of who and what we are. We are that allness expressed as God and as love. So all of God is an expression through me, as me, and for me. So the allness is very important in the title. And then all of God is my inheritance. The inheritance, I think, refers to the creative aspect of God's mind. God creates with an intentionality of expressing love, either in form or simply in the wisdom of God, the love and upliftment of God, if you will, the essence of God. But it could also include the form in a particular dimension, such as we live in, which is the three-dimensional world. Can I see God in everything? Well, God is in my mind, and by extension, everything that I perceive through my right God-centered mind includes God. That would include me as my body, me as my psychology, me as my thoughts, the entity that I call God in the dream of the world in which I live. I can observe this. This is the inheritance that I've received. And it is good, and God declared it good. And so that's the nature and the beingness of God, a maximal expression of love as form or as essence. It's also referred to as content. The content of everything, behind everything, is God. God is the essence or the chi, the life-giving force of love behind everything. And that is my inheritance. Now, can I then, in particularization of my thoughts, individuation of my thoughts, demonstrate and manifest at the level of the three-dimensional world of senses? Well, yes, we can, because God is in my mind. And I can experience anything that I choose. Now, there are always, of course, limitations on or resistance to my ability to create as God creates. And that's what we're working on. Any limitations or resistance that we have. Why should we be any less than God? Except in the angle or the aspect that God created us. We didn't create God. But other than that, we're full legatees, if you will, of God. All of God is our inheritance. Well, let's take a look at this in a little more depth. Here's a quote from Ecclesiastes 7, chapter 7, verse 11. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it there is profit to them that see the sun. And that's spelled S-U-N. But that would reference the light. So wisdom is good with an inheritance. And by it then, the wisdom, we can profit because we see the light. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Can we demonstrate as legatees of God, inheriting all of God, that which God could create, we can co-create with God. And in Ecclesiastes, it's making reference to what I was just sharing with you. It's a beautiful, beautiful sentiment, and it gives us such hope. You know, the hope-filled life, I think, is one of such heaven. Always hoping, always striving, but not in an effort-filled way. Striving to be that light. I am the light that can serve the world as an expression of God's light. Isn't that a lovely hope? I can aspire to that, like a star. Not a Hollywood or Broadway star or movie star. No, I'm not talking about that, of course. What I'm talking about is a metaphor, a celestial star from the heavens itself. We're no less than those stars in shining our light. And we can do it particularly by thinking loving thoughts, casting out of our minds fearful thoughts. That's most important. Casting out fearful thoughts, focusing on loving thoughts, and expressing it to everyone and everything that we meet, making it a holy encounter. This is exactly what I think is our inheritance, the ability to shine this light. Now, there are a variety, of course, of means to do this. I mentioned forgiveness. I think charity is another aspect of it. Compassion, kindness, an empathy with people, a willingness to be as Christ, and literally see people as they are, as the Christ themselves as well. I know myself as the Christ. I know them as the Christ. And in that merging, there's a unity of being. And the unity is so holy that it transforms and transfigures everything that I may have been thinking contrary to the holiness. Because unholiness is impossible. All of God is my inheritance. It is omnipresent. There is no place for anything other than the love of God. I can imagine other than the love of God. And that would, in one sense, block out my awareness of the omnipresence of love. But is the presence of love still in evidence if I change my mind? Certainly it's there, like the clouds. Is the sun still behind the clouds? Using Ecclesiastes in the reference to the sun. When the clouds part, the sun was always there. The light was always there. And of course, that's true with us as well. When the clouds part in our minds, the egoic clouds of fear and denial, the love of God is always there. It's omnipresent. It's a maximal expression of who and what God and we are. It's beautiful and it's hope-filled. Well, let's get into the reading itself. He who created me acts through me. He has never loosed me from his eternal endurance and embrace. Infinite mind is my Father, and infinite love is my mother. Unto me, their beloved creation, they have given fully of themselves. All power in heaven and on earth is mine, for my inheritance is incorruptible. I may not believe that at times, but it is the truth. Though I let my human mind deceive me, still the heavenly presence enfolds me, knowing that I shall awaken to truth. Too long have I dreamed that the world could hurt me and people disturb me. I now realize that I am the Son of God and free to live with wisdom and plenty. Well, that concludes the first paragraph. There are 4 paragraphs, and they're short. But this first paragraph, God created us and acts through us. This is a reference again to the love that God is. So we're made in the likeness and image of love, a loving being, that God acts through our minds as love. And we can extend through our minds to other people's minds the love that we have been created as and that we inherited. And it was a maximal expression of God, not a partial expression. So any partiality would be a hesitancy on our part, and we want to overcome that. We overcome it by practice. Practice overcoming any thoughts of limitation and negativity. Practice any withholding of your authenticity as love. Practice being and giving all to all. I'd say that would be the first principle that the Holy Spirit will teach us as moving through us, to give all as all. We don't want to withhold our love. We don't want to withhold who and what we are as agents of God, as a messenger of the love that expresses through us. It says here, God acts through us. And he's never loosed us from his eternal embrace. So the mind is my Father, infinite mind, and infinite love is my mother. Well, these are metaphors, of course, to express to our level of understanding who and what God is to us. Infinite mind, infinite Father, Mother, God, Father Heaven, Mother Earth, however you want to understand it. It gives you a better grasp, I think, of the infinitude that you and I really represent. We are without boundaries. Now, I'm not saying that we don't respect boundaries. We want to be aware that certain people have a right to choose not to listen or accept the love that we are extending to them. And that would only be a matter of time, because eventually everybody awakens to who and what they are is love. And then, of course, expressing love, accepting love, receiving love, giving love, it's all the same. And there's no hesitancy, there are no boundaries to that. But in the meantime, it's a loving act to be respectful of people's boundaries. And I understand that. But we can still think lovingly for them and of them, because I know that I'm loved unconditionally. And since I'm loved unconditionally, I have the ability to express unconditional love to all of my brothers and sisters, all of my neighbors, on the community level and on the worldly level. That is the truth. And of course, there's no withholding that. A loving act is always appreciated at some level by the other person, who will then accept it. And to some degree, it's always registered in their minds, because like attracts like, and they are a loving entity, as are we. And so that love that's expressed and extended does get registered, does get accepted at some level, because like does attract like. And there'll be a full awakening within our minds and within their minds. And time ultimately is an illusion because all there is eternity. And you can't measure eternity. It's too vast. There's no limits to it. And so we don't have to worry about, well, when are they going to accept my expression of love? We have all of eternity to swim around in the love of God because God is acting through them as God is acting through me. Well, let's go on to the next paragraph. Let me check the time here. We're doing well. Health is my inheritance. Divine mind is incapable of knowing other than strength and wholeness. The health that created me acts through me. Pure life flows through my body as pure thinking flows through my mind. I inherit every tendency to perfect living. Well, so this article is now identifying, firstly, in the general sense that we've inherited love as our essence. And now it's expressing that health on the level of the body and at the level of the three-dimensional world is our inheritance, so that we can most fully and most purposefully express God's love. There's no limitations. I want to identify the purpose of the body as far as I understand it spiritually. The purpose of the body is as a communication device and a learning device. So it's really twofold. I can use my body to express and communicate loving thoughts, kindnesses, acts of charity, acts of forgiveness. And I can learn as well things that seem to happen. One person does something to me at the level I identify as a body. And it's a learning experience and device of my body to say, well, that was an interesting experience. Do I see it lovingly or do I see it fearfully? I had an experience just today where something that my wife was doing really struck a negative chord in me, one of my ego buttons. And I felt very threatened. I didn't feel loving at all. Now I, in my ego thinking in that moment, felt that I was expressing love as I complained to her and was negative. But really it was a fearful thought on my part. And God has nothing to do with fear. That's an egoic choice that we make. It may have to do with a lack of trust. It may have to do with a lack of self-esteem on our part. It may have a number of reasons that we look at the other person and project our own infantile characteristics onto them and suspect that they would act accordingly. But it's projections from things that we have done and feel guilty about. But in any case, I had this experience. And ultimately, of course, she and I deepened our relationship by talking about it honestly through communication. Again, a function of the body. So there was an opportunity on my part to use the body, first wrongly, and then secondly with a co-creative act of love and healing with God and the Holy Spirit, God's ambassador, God's bridge between the earth and heaven that's within us, the Holy Spirit. So health is our inheritance at the level of the body. We experience well-being. We know that we can heal our minds and that our bodies are then outward manifestations or pictures of what we feel in the mind, what we think in the mind. Mind is the builder, mind is the creator, particularly the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is known, of course, as subjective mind, and that builds the outward vista or that which we see. sometimes at a conscious level, sometimes just simply subconsciously. We're not aware of where that thought came from that created that perception. But the truth be told, we are in charge of the entirety of our minds when we align with God's will and God's mind. And that's what we're learning to do. That's what we're learning to be all about as angels, as godlings, as all of God as our inheritance. Well, that's a reference to health. Next, it says prosperity is my inheritance. Now, prosperity in this sense, I think, refers to having everything that we need, uh, not to excess, but all our needs are met. And so we have the resources, we have the wherewithal, we have the mentality to know our prosperity. And so we're able to give as well as receive. I know that there's no scarcity. We mentioned earlier, all of God is our inheritance. And so there's no scarcity. So prosperity is my inheritance. Around me is all of God. Think of nature. There's no shortage in nature. What people do with nature may come from an idea of scarcity, but that's not the truth. So around me is all of God. Within me are the unlimited resources of mind. Mind is certainly unlimited. It's not bound by form. We're not talking about the brain, which has, we can measure and weigh and, all kinds of dimensionality and form. But we're talking about the mind, which is a metaphysical property. And metaphysically, there's no limit to our minds. We are free. We can express with all of God in our minds, anything and everything. Because, as it says here, we have the unlimited resources of mind with a capital M. The bounty and fullness of spirit are mine, this day and forevermore. I accept this abundance and use it with wisdom. Well, the next paragraph, and we're checking the time here again, ideas are my inheritance. Infinite mind sustains its creations in all its ways. I have unlimited ideas of good to express. I have always known what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Never a hesitation on my part, for God has revealed right action for every moment. With this inheritance, and we're speaking here now of infinite mind, with this inheritance of my unlimited, infinite mind, I'm always well and prosperous, referring back to the previous two paragraphs, prosperity and wellness. The riches of the universe invite me to partake of their goodness, and I accept them with joy. Well, how wonderful it is to express with the richness of the universe, with the entirety of the cosmos, with all of the dimensions that God has created, which are infinite. We are simultaneously in many, many of these dimensions. My Father's house holds many mansions. My consciousness is focused on the dimension and the mansion here in the body and on the earth. But of course, my mind is infinite as of God. All of God is my inheritance. And I occupy all of the mansions in God's house, subject, of course, to the limitations of my own consciousness at this particular instant. But I can get glimpses of the entirety of God's mansions, all of them in God's house, in the cosmos, in the heavens, in the universes upon dimensions upon dimensions. There is no death. The Son of God is free. There is no pain. the Son of God is free. Let your mind take you to the Father Heaven that loves you unconditionally and would never, never wish pain on any of its children. He is a loving God, a God who knows how to heal, a God who gives perfect health, perfect prosperity, perfect creativity, to always have the right ideas flowing through us through the Holy Spirit. This is the truth. And as we know, the truth will set us free. And perfect love casts out all fear. Let's focus on that for a moment, because as we know, fearful thinking, it seems to invade our minds. But if we look a little more deeply, it's always a choice, and we can choose otherwise. Jesus admonishes us, my brother, choose again. Choose with me. I know the way. I know the way and the life. I know the way and the life and the light. Be with me in the Christ itself that you are as well. Jesus could not be Christed to the exclusion of everyone else. Jesus is simply one who awoke to his Christed self. And we have the same opportunity as he told us. We could do what he's done and more. Much more than we ever thought possible. So open your minds to the love that we are, the transcendent, metaphysical, beyond the mind of the body, beyond the ego, to the freedom and the wholeness and the holiness of God itself. That is who and what we are as well. And we can act, think, and speak consistent with our holiness. That is our job. And we're doing it best we can. Keep practicing. Always remember, practice, practice, practice. Not just in sitting meditation and prayer, but in your behavior, in your interactions with people. This is the truth. This is the practice that we will continue to do together with Jesus, with the Holy Spirit, and with all of God. There's nothing to fear. There's only love. And we will be inheritants, legatees of perfect health, perfect love, perfect mind, perfect prosperity. And so it is. I'm really grateful and thankful that you've joined us today. And I want to say thank you to the NECAT Network for putting these videos on the air. Thank you to my wife, Candace, who edits these videos. And thank you, dear viewer and listener. Namaste, shalom, and peace.